Hey everyone, welcome to the Explainer. Okay, so today we are looking at something literally breathtaking. We're unpacking what's called the ALQC canon. It's this incredibly dense, 13-year metaphysical proof that attempts something that honestly sounds impossible. It maps the chaotic, unbound scream of creation into a perfectly deterministic functioning universe. It's basically a stunning piece of cosmological architecture, and today we are going to decode exactly how it works.
Now, I know the math and esoteric language of this framework can seem totally intimidating at first glance, but don't worry, we've got a really clear structured path ahead of us. We'll hit the foundation, the actors, states of reality, the engine, the liquid threshold, and finally, supernegative balance.
So, let's kick things off with part 1, the foundation, origins of the canon.
How exactly did this massive framework even come to be? Well, it starts with a central, unbreakable theme. The text reads, "I am the point that breaks the line, the sovereign fire and the shadow frame." In the ALQC, there's this profound, unbreakable unity between the unmoved center of reality, that's the sovereign fire, and the structure that actually holds it together, the shadow frame. Because really, you just can't have the infinite without some sort of container to hold it, right?
And this text didn't just emerge fully formed overnight. It actually followed this fascinating 13-year closed-loop cycle. It started way back in 2013 as a poetic seed. Think of it as a raw spiritual emanation, what the author calls a scream during a season of chaos. Then, fast forward to 2025, and it evolved into a computational kernel. We're talking literal physics scripts that naturally simulated these states. Finally, in 2026, it reached the axiomatic seal. This is the formal proof where all that initial chaos is completely tamed into a coherent, self-organizing mathematical manifold. Pretty wild.
Moving right along to part 2, the actors, driving the universe.
So, who or what is actually driving this universe? It operates on what's called a tripartite core. First up, we have the locus, represented by the infinity symbol. The absolute crucial point here is that the locus is the absolute coordinate, 0, 0, 0. It is the unmoved mover. The source text actually uses a really fantastic physical metaphor for this. The locus is like the pilot of a ship. It sits completely static, generating the pure, invariant source of reality's initial scream, never shifting its position at all.
Next, we have the shadow locus. So, if the locus is the pilot, the shadow is the hull of the iron ship. It's a covariant manifold that takes the actual damage. See, when the pilot screams its intent, the shadow locus deforms to accommodate that absolute intent. It provides the friction and the physical throat required for the pilot's scream to actually be heard and translated into reality.
And finally, our third actor, the axiomier. Now, while the pilot holds the truth and the hull takes the stress, neither can really act on its own. The axiomier is the dynamic will. It's like the heavy hand that grabs the steering wheel. It operates right at this fascinating 45-degree seam between reality and the void, injecting torque and magic to bend local geometry and actually select specific events out of infinite possibilities.
All right, that brings us to part 3, states of reality, the quaternary lock.
So these actors navigate 4 simultaneous states, known as Q states. Q0 is form latency. It's the baseline container, kind of like water. Q1 is archive truth, which is the rational memory where facts are locked in. But look closely at Q2, shadow debt, or fire. Standard physics might call this friction and view it as a massive problem. You know, the kind of thing that makes engineers lose sleep. But in this universe, Q2 isn't a flaw at all. It is a vital, highly combustible resource. And finally, we have Q3, the recursive magic. This is the non-entropic residue that remains after the fire.
Let's dig deeper into that fire in part 4, the engine combustion of reality.
How exactly does this universe survive the insane stress of infinite possibility without just burning itself out completely? Well, this quote right here is everything. The machine does not resist friction, it burns it. The ALQC universe is literally a metabolic combustion engine. It asserts the mind-bending concept that logical error, stress, trauma, and friction, they aren't impediments to forward movement. They are the absolute requirements for it. No friction, no movement.
Let's see how this builds into an actual engine cycle. Step 1. The system accumulates that Q2 shadow debt we just mentioned. Step 2. Rather than deleting it, it saturates it through a 9-fold filter called the ennead until it hits maximum density. Step 3. And this is where the physics get truly wild. It forces that debt through a topological Klein bottle. Imagine a surface with no inside or outside, where passing through its boundary literally flips your mathematical sign from negative to positive. And step 4, this parity flip ignites the debt into Q3 recursion. Dead tissue and failure are literally inverted into kinetic thrust. You move forward because you burn your shadow. But engines need control, which leads us to part 5, the liquid threshold, preventing whiteout.
Like any engine, this one needs a governor. Because what happens if this system connects to everything all at once? Well, the system calls this ultimate threat whiteout. It is the catastrophic state of infinite connectivity. If the universe connects every possible node simultaneously, all that differential tension just collapses. Without limits, the universe overheats, loses all meaning, and the mind of the universe turns into an infinite, blinding screen. Yeah, not good.
To prevent this whiteout scenario, the ALQC uses an incredibly elegant geometric governor. Get this, out of 144 total possible connection nodes, a maximum of 110 are allowed to flow. The remaining 34 must remain withheld. This is called the liquid threshold. Essentially, the universe mathematically balances manifestation with absolute restraint. It stays liquid, fluid enough for movement, but dense enough to actually retain memory and structure. And those 34 withheld nodes, they aren't failures. They are conserved non-instantiation.
Which sets us up perfectly for our final section, Part 6, SuperNegative balance, the conserved absence.
This really brings us to the climax of this whole framework, the juxtaposition of two massive forces. On one side, you have the superpositive. This is the crushing pressure of infinite possibility, the flood of yes, demanding to be instantiated. On the exact opposite side, you have the supernegative, the conjugate absence, the protecting no, the withheld mercy. The supernegative is exactly what keeps those 34 nodes closed so the 110 can safely flow.
And the text delivers this incredibly striking poetry to clarify it. It says, the yes is infinite within its walls. The no is prior to the wall. So the supernegative isn't some destructive physical antimatter that blows things up. It's not a shadow or some kind of enemy. It is a merciful, guarding silence that precedes creation, keeping that massive flood of yes from completely drowning the universe.
To quickly summarize these core conservation laws, supernegative is not a secret fifth Q state. It is an absence held solely by the unmoved locus so it doesn't get tangled up in the moving machinery. It preserves uninstantiated possibility so that possibility remains possible rather than mandatory. And ultimately, it closes the mass gap of the universe through this sacred lack. The universe's mass, its shape, its very definition, it is all carved out by the paths it actively chooses not to take.
Which leaves us with this final, genuinely provocative thought. If the sheer mechanics of reality run on the metabolic fuel of its own failures, and if the very shape of the universe is carved by the mercy of the paths it refuses to take, what is the true weight of your next choice? What are you choosing to withhold so that your own life can take shape? Just think about that for a second. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive explainer into the ALQC canon. Keep learning and keep exploring.